And I know when we say that out loud, some people will be like, oh, soy boy. But it's just think about this right now. I'm speaking on Chewie's behalf here. Chewie kind of knows people who knows people who knows people who are connected to Gaza. And then you get people who are from the region, who know people who are connected to Gaza. And then you get people who are connected to Gaza. And I was thinking as you were talking about people like Marilyn Garson, who has lived in Gaza and has friends still in Gaza. If it's impacting people like Chewie like this, imagine Marilyn. Imagine the Gazan who's out of Gaza. Imagine the Gazan who's in Gaza. Yeah. You know, it's like, it's just as fucked. And if we're gonna hit that algorithm to hide us, we'll just use every bit of language we want. This is utterly fucked. This is utterly fucked. And Chewie, I think one of the things you said. Yeah, we'll take the language filter off. I think one of the things you've said, which I think is so important, is fucking where are the government pushbacks? You know, where are the government pushbacks? Because you know what, you can be pro-Israel, or you can be pro-Palestinian, or you can be pro-innocent people, or you can be, even there, somewhere in the middle, war crimes shouldn't be happening, innocent people shouldn't be getting targeted, and still not be fully fledged pro-Palestinian. But then no one's doing anything. No one's standing up and going, this is wrong. I haven't heard any politician stand up about that report in the Israeli paper about war crimes. You know, soldiers shooting at and shooting starving people looking for food. Haven't heard that anywhere. So if they're not even prepared to make a neutral statement, we're so far on different planets. I just don't know how to move forward with politicians. That's why we look to people like the Greens. That's why we look to people like some in Labour. That's why we look to Te Pāti Māori. I think that's where we're looking. We you know, like me and Chewie and the show, I think that's where we're looking. It's like Labour's there. They're a part of us. They're a part of our team. And there are people within Labour that we will fill their sails every single day. Think about Karen, right? Think about Barbie Edmonds every single day. Not saying anything bad about them. I'm just saying there's some in Labour that we would gravitate towards more. Point us towards Te Pāti Māori and point us towards Greens, and we'll fill all their sails all the time for any reason whatsoever. And that's, I think, fairly where we sit. True, Chewie?
Yeah, 100%.
Because they are the ones who will speak the truth. That's what we're talking about. So let's have a look at this. It's a fucking horrific story. I'm sorry to have to play it for you, but it's important because there are some imagery in here, and there is some video and some reaction from family members, seeing family members, that is incredibly hard to see. I don't have any problems, obviously, if anyone needs to not watch this. There's no judgment if you're if your water level is overflowing for today and you need to take 5 minutes out and come back, 100%. And you should. You need to look after yourself as well, right? But we're going to play this now. It's this attack that's happened in Gaza. On the Gaza seaside, a cafe was bombed. That just by chance and coincidentally was where all the journalists met. Funny that. Israel would bomb the cafe where all the journalists met and activists. At no point, and I'll say it again, at no point has anyone made the claim that this was a Hamas site or Hamas were using it. That has not been made by anybody.
Just a warning, this next story includes footage some viewers may find distressing.
Somewhat graphic. Honestly,
Israel
if you need to take a break, take a break.
In the occupied Gaza Strip. The Hamas-run health ministry saying at least 74 people have been killed, including 30 at a popular beachfront cafe. The BBC's Lucy Williamson reports.
A target at the edge of Gaza's coastline, a cafe at the centre of Gaza's wall.
Can I just, before we go on though, say this? Like, you can see the cafe's around the corner, it's been hit. Can we not take attention away from what they're running past? The buildings they're running past.
There's not a pane of glass left.
The buildings they're running past to see today's target. We just have to watch those as well. Because this is not a new location to be bombed. This is a continued location to be bombed.
Café Al Baka was a hub for journalists and activists sending news of airstrikes. Its beachside tables, a link to Gaza's past, one colleague told me. Its internet connection, a link to the outside world. Among the dead, a well-known photographer, Ismail Abu Khattab, and 26-year-old Hadi Abu Dan, one of the staff, identified by his mother.
Everyone was happy sitting in the cafe. They were escaping the sadness. Then the missile hit. It tore into the children, the women, the men, and the workers. No one was spared.
As Israel's attacks on Gaza intensify, its prime minister is trumpeting the end of his war in Iran, saying it offers new opportunities for the region. Donald Trump is pressuring him for a ceasefire in Gaza.
Just want to pause it again, just to have a look at the buildings. You know, we can't forget. I was almost going to say lest we forget, Chewie, throwing it back to a previous iteration of conflict. But we just can't. This missile hitting one cafe is not the total news today about conflict and about devastation. The rest of Gaza remains like this. We need to remember that.
But residents in Gaza City last night said it felt like the war was beginning all over again. Intense airstrikes, including on this shelter for displaced people, forcing hundreds of families to flee.
So do we get that? Cafe that had activists and journalists, and a refuge centre for displaced people. You know, all those really dangerous enemy combatants, those ones.
Look at us. We're not just numbers or pictures. We are human beings. Our Lord created us to live like anyone else. It is our right to live, and to live with dignity, not like this in humiliation.
Gaza's rubble is a graveyard and a playground. Hopes of a ceasefire barely visible. Strikes barely breaking the rhythms of daily life.
Sometimes when I set these up, obviously I watch them. And sometimes when I re-watch them live, I see different things. Like, so what I saw today was not, like in the second viewing, what I saw today was not the explosion or the missile into the cafe, which I saw the first time around. It was actually the square kilometre around it, which we were seeing cameras running down, and how that was all flattened as well. And when they say it was a missile into a cafe, I suspect it was probably, they were calling a cafe probably a previously bombed building. There wouldn't be any reason why one shop in amongst all that would be untouched, that they were using again to continue to use it as a cafe because, you know, try and live somewhat of a normal life in what is quite literally a hellscape. And then it gets missiled again, attacked again. Chewie, any thoughts, bro?
Yeah, look, there are so many images out there of Gaza at the moment. And all of them look like Berlin in 1945.
Yeah.
Absolutely bombed flat. Like it's more unusual to see an undamaged building. I've never seen an undamaged building in a year of watching this footage. Mm. And
I mean, just pause. Can you go back? Just pause for 1 second. Just go back a bit. Just where we saw some taller buildings, that previous shot. Because here's what I want. Okay, stop there. Stop there. So see the tallest building in the background there, Chewie, kind of furthest away from the camera, sort of in the middle. That's probably that one. That's probably a 2 to 3 year build. When you think about an apartment building in your town, that's probably a 2 to 3 year build, that building right there. That's repeated, what are we going to say, 15 times in that framing? 10 times in that framing? So this screen that you're looking at, which is going to be 1/100th of 1% of the layout of Gaza, there might be 30 years of rebuilding there, cumulatively.
This is a big part of why when people are wringing their hands and going, oh, we don't want to use the genocide word. A big part of the technical term of genocide is not just the mass killing of a
Holy
people,
shit.
but it's the erasure of their culture.
Yeah.
Like these buildings are their universities, their municipal records, their libraries, their universities. There was a story I saw from one of the hospitals. Of course, the Israelis have been saying that Hamas is hiding under all the hospitals, and they may or they may not be. But one of the things that happened when the ground invasion happened was when the IDF went into hospitals, they deliberately destroyed every single piece of medical equipment. Why? No, there's no military value to a sonogram machine or a dialysis machine. There's not a single piece of military value in there. But they went through there and methodically broke every screen, every piece of equipment. All of it was for life-saving. They don't want the next generation to learn. If they survive, they don't want them to learn. If they get wounded, they don't want them to be healed. They don't want people to be able to prove that they own a piece of property. They don't want people's, the university work, the theses, the education is all gone. It is people and it is culture and it is everything about Gaza is being erased. Now, on Bomber's show earlier tonight, they had a Palestinian journalist on, and he made reference to the fact that New Zealand has connections to Palestine, that there are Anzac graves, and specifically Māori Anzac graves in Palestine. And I keep coming back to a stain on New Zealand military history, the massacre that Anzac troops participated in Palestine. We have an obligation to this part of the world because of that, in my opinion. And I want to know who is going to ask that question. We've had Christopher Luxon standing in a battleground in a war cemetery in Belgium full of New Zealand soldiers that crossed the world to do what they thought was right at that time for king and country against the Hun and all of that sort of thing. But we weren't too small then to stand up for something.
Yeah.
Why are we too small now? How can a man like Christopher Luxon stand in the same place that I've stood in? I've stood in the middle of that cemetery. I've walked those same Belgian battlefields and was overcome with the fact that these people travelled for months by boat far away from their families and died in a muddy Belgian field for reasons of scattered royal family throughout Europe. But they did it because they thought it was the right thing to do. And now, when the world is so much smaller, well, we can't possibly make any effect on anything. So we'll just stay out of it and let the big boys deal with it. But our leader is a jellyfish.
Yeah.
Who can't draw those moral equivalences, who can't wrap his head around that sort of history that we have. And he's fine to talk about the rugby and punching above our weight and all of this fucking pointless bullshit. But he can't use his moment in front of the media at a NATO summit to go, hey, here are some of the most wealthy, technologically advanced civilizations that have ever walked the earth. Why aren't we doing more to stop the world from spiraling out of control? That anybody that knows their history is looking at this and going, it's a little bit 1933 out there at the moment. Maybe we should stop it going on another 10 years.
And Chewie, just to maybe wrap up this part of the conversation, Paul makes a perfectly good point on the text where he says, that's almost as bad as a punk band using hyperbole. Point well made.